Hi, everyone. My name is Chad Van Handel. I'm the Chief Lending Officer at Unison Credit Union. Welcome to another episode of the Utalk Podcast Real Estate Edition. Today, we have Craig Herrell in the studio. Craig started his real estate journey in 2015. He's the founder of Happy Home Investing, Happy Home Rentals, and Happy Home Contracting. Really excited to dig into this story with Craig. So without further ado, let's welcome Craig to the studio.
Thanks, Chad. I feel very blessed to be here.
Thank you. So we talked a little bit beforehand, but I think the best place to start is just how did you get started and where did the real estate desire kind of come in for you?
Yeah, sure. So where I got started is not the most entertaining or interesting story, just because it was a really simple deal. At this time, I was, so this was 2015. I was living in Appleton on Seymour Street. And my neighbor had outgrown his house. So we were just talking in the backyard. He's like, yep, we're moving. Shai's pregnant again. Or I forget exactly what the situation was, but, we're going to sell. I'm like, how much you want for it? How much you got to have? He's like, well, I'm trying to get $115 if I would list it, but I would sell it to you for $100 on a handshake right now. And he stuck his hand up. And I thought about it for 2 or 3 seconds, and I grabbed his hand. Like, all right. Like, it's a 3-bedroom, 1-bath in Appleton, 2-car detached garage, huge backyard. Like, okay.
Checked all the boxes.
Yep, I can make this work. This is going to cash flow nicely. So, and because it was right next door to my house, there's big backyards on those lots on Seymour Street that go to the north. There's big backyards that back up to Riverview Gardens.
Okay.
And this is just when they were establishing Riverview Gardens. There's a whole trail system and everything back out there. And so I knew I had that as a sales feature too, but because I live next door, I threw in all the property maintenance as far as lawn mowing, snow shoveling, that sort of thing.
Nice.
So trying to go for even higher rent, get a better return. So I still own that house today. I did actually put a roof on it last summer, so I tore the whole thing off and put it on myself in a day and a half. That was pretty fun.
So other than that, though, no other maintenance to the house, no other renovations or anything significant?
Nothing significant because of that roof. There was some leakage in the back of the thing, of the back of the roof that ended up leaking down into the bathroom, kind of around the whole venting area, because when the roof was originally done, it wasn't done right.
Sure.
So we did end up replacing some drywall, some basic paint, but other than that, we did have one set of tenants run through there that kind of trashed the basement carpet.
Okay.
So we did have to put that in just to get the odor out from the pets.
Sure.
But yeah, relatively, it's been a pretty maintenance-free property.
But so let's back up even before you bought that house, though. What was it always the plan to get into real estate? How did you kind of, where did this come from?
Yeah, so back way up. So technically the first investment property I think I ever worked on, I was 14 years old.
Okay.
My uncle, all of my uncles are very industrious guys. I come up from a whole family of farmers,
Sure.
Very hardworking guys. And my uncle Tony was working building houses, and I believe he was building some spec houses. And I think what I was free labor. My brother and myself and my dad got recruited to go help him build some of these houses. I honestly went because it was an opportunity to run a nail gun.
Sure.
And I was a 14-year-old kid.
Sure,
I'm like,
yeah.
oh, this is awesome, Had my whole tool belts and the whole thing. But really, that kind of laid the groundwork of my, my construction education.
Sure.
As a 14-year-old sitting on top of a roof, getting the trusses lined up and nailing the trusses
Sure,
to
right.
put together a roof system was a pretty cool experience. But fast forward from there, I got into, I graduated from high school. I went to college. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do in college, And midway through college, my cousin, Dustin Ergotska, who's a well-known guy in the community, a real estate investor, started to talk to me about kind of this financial education stuff and what financial intelligence was, and I was just so green. And he turned me onto the book Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Okay.
And I am a product of the Rich Dad Poor Dad system.
Nice.
I've bought every single book that Robert Kiyosaki has ever sold.
You have the cash flow game as well?
Oh, yeah. I've got
nice.
1.1.
Great.
I've got 2.2. I actually used to play the cash flow game. I would set up a whole board full of characters and just play myself.
Nice,
and I would move from person to person to person to person. And literally, I played the game for hours and hours just trying to ingrain in myself this get out of the rat race.
Yeah, the passive income. And
that's just it. And really, it all came back to I never really felt settled in any one industry. I had a pretty successful career as a financial advisor, built a little book of business, sold that book of business.
Nice.
When I started learning a lot about real estate, I actually got to the point where I had my securities licenses and I was able to sell mutual funds and bonds and stocks. But at that point, I had already learned about real estate and knew about real estate. And it's like, well, could I take these seniors, because most of my book of business was all Medicare focused,
Sure,
so
yep.
Medicare Advantage, Medicare Supplement, and so all these people, like one of the biggest challenges that retiring people have is how to take their nest egg that they've built in this 401k or something and roll it into some kind of an ongoing cash flow generating retirement vehicle.
Yep.
That's always a big problem. And really the insurance and the investment industries have only kind of put forth like an annuity as far as a solution to that, but there's a lot of shortfalls to annuities.
Right.
So the more I started to grow my financial education outside of my, what I want to call institutional education, the more they started to conflict with each other.
Right.
And the more I figured out, like, well, let's see here. A 401k is 59.5-year-old money.
Locked up.
Locked up, right?
Yep.
There are a couple ways. If you have a hardship,
Sure.
you know, if you have a major hardship, if you have something like that, there's a couple ways that you can get to your money. But that seems insane to me. Like, so I couldn't recommend that to my customers. And my customers were all these really sweet people, seniors, you know, senior citizens and whatever. And I gained their trust. And so at that point, I decided to get out of the business. I sold my book of business to another broker in town, and transitioned. I really was, through reading the Rich Dad Poor Dad books and through learning kind of what Robert had done to become successful. Real estate is just one of the things that he uses. I tried to be very entrepreneurial. I started a lot of businesses. I think it said something like 9 out of 10 small businesses fail. And all that meant to me is I've got to start 10 small businesses, right?
Exactly.
Like
One of them will hit.
One of them's going to hit. And so I've started way more than that. A lot of good ideas, a lot of things that I just had kind of springboards to see, like, well, could this hit, or could I get the right people around me? Never really put down a tremendous amount of cash, but always had a day job, and then always had a side hustle.
Sure.
So
again, I think that book, Robert Kiyosaki's book, Rich Dad Poor Dad. I mean, that's the book virtually everybody reads, I think, to get started, or at least the one that has the most impact for people. So
it is. I say there's 3. Every newbie that like just gets into personal development, it's Rich Dad Poor Dad, it's Think and Grow Rich, and then it's How to Win Friends and Influence People. If you start with those 3 books and just read them each 10 times, you know?
You'll be farther ahead than most people.
That's just it. You'll be able to pull enough wisdom out of, because wisdom is kind of universal. Everybody spins it a different way, but it's just wisdom. And so you'll be able to pull enough out of that you can move forward and be effective and take action.
So you're working full-time W-2 jobs. You transition out of the financial advisor role. You're still kind of doing sales jobs, I think.
Yeah, right. So I transferred out of financial advisory and moved. But advisory is really fun. You know, it's fun kind of, you know, trying to go in and solve problems and help people, bring knowledge to people with creative solutions, right? So I was actually recruited by a gentleman by the name of Jeff Lang. Love this guy. He changed my life, but was recruited by Jeff Lang to join Omni Resources. It's a technology advising firm. At the time, they were focused on IT staffing, and then they were focused on solution development. And that was really something that was exciting to me, is going into a company, learning about their technology profile, and then going back to all these advisors that were way smarter than I am. And coming up with creative solutions. And so I spent a while in the technology advisory role. I had moved away from Omni Resources. They made some big change. Went to a different company called, was at the time Collaborative Consulting out of Wausau. They got bought by CGI, which is like the 5th largest technology consulting company in the world. So I went from like a company of like 200 people, all of a sudden I'm part of this 90,000 person company, right? And just, I mean, you are just a cog in the machine, man. And you're this big. Even if you're running a couple $1 million of business, man, you're this big of a cog.
I'm sure that, the fact that you don't have control over your future, starts to, play a little bit more in your mind at that point, too.
It is. And I'm just kind of a small-time guy, or like a small-town guy. I was flying back and forth to Boston a couple.
Oh, really?
Yep, absolutely. And wearing 3-piece suits to work.
Oh,
and
nice.
I got criticized because I didn't polish my shoes. Like I came out to Boston with my suit on and I didn't polish my shoes, and they're like criticizing me as the new sales guy. I'm like, holy cow, this is a whole different ball game.
That's funny.
And one, I don't fit well. I wore my contractor boots today. Like I don't really fit well in the corporate space. And I think that's why I had I made a lot of changes trying to find where I fit really well, and ultimately, when I left the corporate world, I finally found where I fit really well.
So as much as you say it was a handshake deal, there was a lot more going on. I mean, the seed was already planted for real estate for you, and you were making strides towards it. So are you putting money aside, or how, when you shook that handshake, how did you know how you were going to finance it at that point?
I did, just because at that time in my life, my wife and I at the time, we had actually bought and pseudo flipped two other properties. But we always lived in them. The intention wasn't to buy them, fix them up, sell them, make a lot of money. And so we had gotten to the point where we had done all the seminars, we had bought all the books, we had made so many mistakes. We were like $40,000 in credit card debt. We bought our house and lived in it for, I think, 7 months without a kitchen. I had so much Subway during those 7 months. Had a kitchen gifted to us from somebody that we knew, just God moving all the things. But then had worked our way back to the point she had a really good job and she was going back to school to get her master's, and I was doing well in technology sales. I was always financially successful, but I wasn't ultra fulfilled sort of thing. And so we had a fair amount of cash. We had already paid our house off, but had no assets. I mean, we literally had 0 assets, and we knew at that point, how to read a balance sheet and all of those types of things, but realized that our asset column was at 0.
Sure.
And so then finally, made the decision. So from playing the game cash flow, have you ever played cash flow?
I've seen pictures, but no, I've not played it.
So cash flow.
A lot of Monopoly though, but mostly by myself because nobody wanted to play against me.
I'll play Monopoly. We'll get together. But so with cash flow, there's a couple different routes that you can take, and it's all luck of the draw. But the luck of the draw is the career, or not even just the career, but like the economic situation you get set in. So like as an example, one's a secretary. So you make not a great amount of money, but you don't have all the student debt and you don't have all the things. So you're very small. You're very lean from a liability standpoint, but you're also very lean from an income standpoint. And then there's the airline pilot, that a lot of income, but also a lot of expenses and liabilities. And so what we learned was that we could earn like the pilot, but we could live like the secretary, and you could just fly. You could just steamroll forward. And so that's the position that my wife and I at the time had worked ourselves into. And so that's why we were able to just,
that's cool.
Okay, deal, let's do it.
And so if were you into like the FIRE movement, like what financial independence, retire early? Did you get into that at all, or it was just minimize the expense? I think that's kind of their mantra is minimize expenses, maximize kind of what you're putting down into the savings account.
Yeah, I mean, I've gone through a lot of different programs. So like the full Dave Ramsey training course, we did that. We did the debt snowball thing. It worked. That's how we were able to get out of debt. Such a tremendous vehicle. So we had used different things like that, but I haven't specifically heard of FIRE.
Okay.
No.
All right. So you've got this property, you're shaking hands. Obviously, you've got some experience in being able to contract and things like that. Right. Were you concerned about finding tenants and some of that stuff?
It was all kind of a very much ready, fire, aim approach. Like I knew I had a good property, and that's kind of like any newbie that's going to get into the business. If you can buy it right, you can pretty much make up the rest of the stuff and make it work. So as far as finding tenants, I had no idea. I bought it for them. I closed. Like now, we have tenants lined up before we usually close. Yep. If it's a move-in ready property, or if it's one that we have to do a flip on, we're finding tenants mid-construction process, and by the plaster's drying and they're moving in, sort of thing. This one was totally not that way. The first thing I needed to do was get the banking lined up, because I didn't really have a bank lined up. I had no mortgage at that point. We had done some stuff with Community First, and I think that's I'm not sure exactly how we landed on Prospera, but we started with Prospera. And it was like, the loan was approved 2 days before closing, and just barely got it all in under the wire, sort of thing. As amateur as you can do it.
But the debt didn't scare you on the business side, because again, you were going down that passive income.
Yeah, what I was confident in is my financial intelligence. And at that point, what I was confident in is my ability to do the numbers. It's pretty easy to do a rental comp. Well, back then it was like before Facebook. Almost, we were on Craigslist, back then. But I posted it on Craigslist, and dude, it's crazy. I think we had 25, 30 responses in 24 hours, and then it's like, okay, how do we vet tenants? What contracts are we going to use for rental agreements? All this kind of stuff.
So let's dive in. So the legal side, let's start kind of right there, because that tends to be a little bit of a. Did you have an LLC? Were you going into an LLC, or was it in your personal name?
We started an LLC to buy that house.
Right.
I had other LLCs in the past and knew how to do that from my previous financial education. Today, we use a lot of lawyers. We use, we have a good attorney team. We have a good insurance team. But back then, we just kind of made it all up. And when retroactively now, when we were talking to our attorneys, they're like, well, you did it all the right way. Like, oh, great. Threw a dartboard at the thing and hope it sticks, sort of thing. So did form an LLC and had all that in place just to kind of separate ourselves, from the liability.
No, that's good. And then what about, I know you got some financial acumen, but did you have an accountant lined up, or how long did that take for you?
We didn't. So I've done QuickBooks online.
You have these 10 side hustles that you've been trying to.
That's just it. Well, and what's so funny is if you don't make $600, you don't have to file taxes. Okay. So a lot of these side hustles didn't make $600. I spent a couple $1,000. Like, man, could this idea go? Could it not go? Proof of concept type stuff. But but I was very aware of how to file all that and how to do all that. It does get a lot more complicated now that we have so many entities that are all making money. So now that that CPA is critical, but back then frankly it wasn't that big.
So did you have to go through a couple before you landed on the one that you're currently with?
We did, yeah, and we were small at the time. We didn't really. So I had done QuickBooks myself until probably just before we blew up and left the corporate world in 2015. And even then, I think I did my taxes all the way up until 2017.
Okay.
And then got to the point where we had multiple properties, multiple businesses making money, and I'm like, look, this is so. Frankly, this is so far beyond what QuickBooks is built for that we really needed to bring in the professionals.
Good. Did you have a vision at that first property that I'm going to build X number of units or X number of properties?
I did. When the first time I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, well, maybe not the first time, but when you get into personal development, you realize very quickly that goal setting is tremendously important. And that's a piece of advice I would give anybody brand new to the game, any game, is set goals and set really high goals. Set dream goals, set 20-year dream goals, and then set like 1-year goals. Like, what am I going to do this year? So in 2005, I set 3 goals. To become financially free, which for those that haven't read Rich Dad Poor Dad, financially free means that your passive income is greater than your fixed expenses for your life. So become financially free, become a millionaire. I have no idea why. Like, it's just some arbitrary
it's good round number, right?
It's good, lots of zeros or whatever. So become a millionaire, and then buy a country estate and be able to live in the country and that whole thing. So I set those goals in probably 2007. And back then, this was have you ever heard of The Secret, the movie? All this visualization and creative visualization and that sort of thing. And so I have these big vision boards and these things that I want in my life. And, just really poured myself into it kind of as hard as I could, and, to try and figure that out. And so that was the vision, was financial freedom. It's just get away from the day job, because I knew I was just terrible at following orders. I'm a terrible employee. I'm not made to be. I'm really just not even made to be governed that much. I kind of resent a lot of authority and control over me, especially if I can't justify it, if it doesn't make sense to me. So that was really the goal, is to kind of escape that nightmare. Robert Kiyosaki calls it the rat race. And so
No, that's good. Like you said, I mean, people shoot too low, and I think if you go to the top, things just conspire to happen, I think, to get you down on that path.
Yeah, I think it comes down to, I heard a quote once. I have a lot of one-liners, but if your why is big enough, your how doesn't matter. So I would go to Peak Potentials seminars, like a 2-day seminar, 16 hours a day sort of thing, and they got you walking on coals and whatever. Well, it wasn't actually walking on coals, but they got you trying to figure out, literally why. Why are you here? What are you here to do? Is it to literally, build your 401k up and, try and live your life and hopefully you die before your last dollar runs out? Is it, to just have a million kids and spread humanity as far as you can take it? Is it to be a missionary and really spread the word of God as much as you can? What's your big why? And once an individual kind of hones in on their big why, the hows start to become kind of easy, because the why becomes more important than the job, than the security, than the fear. That why, that drive, that burning desire, really, for me, that's what took over.
Sure. All right, so you've got this big vision. You've got this first property under contract. You're moving to close that. How soon after that close that you went to the next property, or what was that next step for you?
Well, I thank you for having me do this, because it's really made me go back and do my homework here. So let's see. So June of 2015, I bought my first. August, my second. April of 16, my third. June of 17, my fourth.
Okay.
And then really we left the rat race, if you will. My wife and I at the time kind of started down this journey, but in the middle of the journey, in the summer of 2015 is when my life really changed, and is when I met Katie, my wife today. She really helped me explode this thing and got on board with a vision, and she's been integral in even all of these first flips in getting them going. And so when we got to kind of the end of 2018, at this point we were working together as technology advisors. I had brought her in under me. I was leading a sales organization. And we got to the point where we just loved working with each other so much during the day that we're like, okay, let's just go do this. We know we can do this. So we took the dwelling contractor exam in the winter of 2019, 2017. Passed right away, and in 2018 did almost $100,000 of business as contractors. Nice. Because we had really become accustomed to burning through these houses. We could buy a house, we could roll it over, we could get tenants in it in a matter of. Now we joke around, can we get it down to 2 weeks? Sure. Right now we're pretty much at between 3 and 4 weeks. We can. I mean, just her and I.
Got the system down, basically, and it's just right down.
The system is so good, and it took her and I a long time to get it that good. But then once we created an investment program to bring in new investors, so we weren't limited by only our funds or by only the relationships we could build with banks. And once we really brought that out in 2018, that's when our business truly exploded. And we bought something like 17 houses or 18 houses in the last 2 years. And
so was it hard to find homes around that 17, 18 time frame?
It was and it wasn't. So we have a really interesting strategic advantage in that we can swing the hammer.
Right.
It terrifies a lot of people when they go in and they see joists with rot. What do I got to do here? Or foundation walls with cracks. What do I got to do here? So our strategic advantage was we could come into houses that most investors had passed on, and we could make a $30,000 or $40,000 profitable deal out of that deal. What we came to the realization of is we started out as contractors, and so we put out a shingle and put up a website and the whole thing. Which is funny because the website today says we no longer take residential customers. It's like the worst marketing in the world. But we don't. I don't want any more headaches. Customers are the biggest headache in any business. It comes down to the customers. And so as a contractor, somebody would hire me to come in, and we'd lay out this big vision of this is what you should do. And we would start and we would go down that thing, and every day they wanted to talk at the end of the day, and they want to come in and point at this and point at that. And how are you going to do this? And how are you going to do that? And I was like, okay, I got really sick of answering those questions because when somebody walks to my house now and it's done, all they go is, wow, this looks so beautiful and that looks so great and whatever. And, so as the ability to control where my labor went, that's why we decided to shut down our contracting business at the end of 2019. Was to just be able to control what we were doing with our time, really kind of capitalize on that freedom that we were hoping to gain. And still, I mean, we spend like every second of every day together. It's kind of weird when you tell another married couple, like, what have you spent 24 hours a day every day with your wife, Chad? How would
I give it to you. That's good. Again, you're creating a great life. So how do you decide how much renovation to do on some of these houses? I've seen some of yours. I mean, they're beautiful, and again, they always come in budget. So how do you decide, where to go with some of the stuff?
Well, budget is a relative term because for us, we don't pay for labor.
Right.
So we we typically try and set a budget. I think 4 times now we've originally purchased a house as a rental and got behind the walls and we're like, oh no, this is a flip. And got into it and we're like, geez, there's too much here. So several times we've brought our own cash into deals to take them to the next level. The short answer is we take everything to flip level. I mean, even our rentals. So my wife and I, Katie, our strategy is if we would live there, we'll rent it to your family. And so we take them all to that level. And sometimes that means we spend a little bit more.
Sure.
Sometimes it means we buy them move-in ready, and it's just a little bit of stuff. So, but from a budget standpoint, and kind of you and I were talking before off camera, it comes down to buying the property right.
Right.
You know, if you buy the property right, there are so many sins that can get covered up with the right entry point. When you buy a property wrong, you know, there are even opportunities that you can't take advantage of when you buy it wrong. So it really comes down to when you buy it, how you buy it, that makes a deal or doesn't make a deal.
Then obviously with the background in sales, that probably prepared you to take a bunch of no answers. I know you guys are putting a ton of offers in to try to find those properties.
Yeah, again, Robert Kiyosaki, man, I got to give the guy all the credit in the world. You know, he taught me, he really pointed out what my greatest weakness was and my greatest barrier to entry to get to be financially successful. Maybe the second. The first barrier was just my ignorance to everything financial intelligence. And the second barrier was I had no idea how to sell. I had no idea how to sell. I had no idea how to be in sales. And so he tells the story of the Xerox Corporation, and he ascended through that corporation. And that was one of the big reasons I chose to leave the corporate world that I was at. I was heavy in operations and just go commission only into insurance, start the insurance business, because I got to learn how to sell.
Yep.
I can't work second shift. You know, I just can't.
And so you're putting in a bunch of these offers on houses, and again, you've got your numbers kind of pegged based on a budget that you think, and you've got obviously a contractor's eye, so you can see what's there.
It really went really quick, and this is kind of our competitive advantage today. Is we just aren't afraid of the things that a lot of people are afraid of. So so the second house, the garage was almost falling down. It needed new siding and it needed a new roof. And I took the bones, I ripped all the siding off and took the bones and rebuilt the whole structure of the garage.
Nice.
So then resided it, and then like that big headache that would otherwise be, $15,000 tear a garage down, put one up, it's a $1,500 problem for me. Likewise, I mean, I roof for the cost of the shingles. I can side for the cost of the siding. So we can take a lot of deals where, I guess in the first, two of the first three though, the individual actually came to closing with money to walk away from the house. So, I mean, we were still really, we were trying to make really aggressive offers, make sure we were getting them right, knowing we were kind of buying nightmares. And then we're going to try and figure out how to retroactively solve them.
Okay.
So,
nice.
So yeah, I've never ever lost money on a deal, not even close. But have I blown my budget? Absolutely, plenty of times.
Sure. Did you have a radius that you were looking at on your deals as well?
Yeah, we did. Initially, it was just I don't do any property management. We self-manage everything. We always have, and so it was really geographically based on that. Now we recently moved up to New London, and just with the market the way it is, we've really expanded where we're willing to buy a house. So we just closed our first deal in Wapaka. Okay. So it was a little interesting moving west. Stevens Point isn't out of the realm of where we could go, but otherwise we have houses from Green Bay, Kaukauna, Kimberly, Appleton, Neenah, Menasha, Oshkosh. So pretty much the 41 corridor.
Sure. So most of the houses, though, are they bought with the intention of being a long-term hold, or and they make the decision midway through if it turns into a flip based on kind of what the bones look like?
Yeah, well, and that was the challenge. Is so we've when we released our investment program. And took on our first real big investor. We got a little greedy in that we were going out. We would make like 10 offers at one time. Sure. And then all of a sudden we got 3 of them. In one time. Typically we make 10 offers, we get 1 or we get 0. We got 3 of them in one shot. So it's like, oh gosh, now what? And 1 was a huge rehab, and 2 of them were smaller. And so we actually assigned the contract over to our flipping company. Okay. So we're only buying 2 at one time, and then took our flipping company and actually sat on that house for a long time. As we were getting it flipped, and then we took it to probably 80% and then sold our house and moved into it. Okay. So we could take it to like 110% awesome, and then just sold that at the end of last year, and then moved into kind of our dream house out in London.
You didn't call it this, but house hacking in some regards. I mean, you were living, in kind of a construction zone for a little bit in some of these houses and putting up with some short-term pain for kind of a long-term gain.
A lot of short-term pain. Yep, a lot of short-term pain. It was really funny. This is just kind of a funny story, but in the house that we just lived in Kimberly, it was a rental before we bought it, and the landlord that we come to find out after talking to neighbors was just terrible. Not just landlord, but like guy, just a terrible guy, right? So would evict tenants for no reason and all these things. So we're flipping the house, and my wife is like a bloodhound. She's got like this amazing nose, right? And she's like, "Do you smell that?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" She's like, "I smell fish." I'm like, "What do you mean you smell fish?" So long story short, we pulled 12 fish out of the duct system of this house because my best guess is this landlord had really, ticked off some tenants, and they're like, oh, we'll stick it to this guy.
Oh my God!
So paying for somebody else's sins, but that's the weirdest thing we've ever found in a house is fish, like the skeletal structures of 2 or 3 year old rotted fish in the ductwork.
Well, yeah, that's a surprise, I'm guessing.
It was a surprise. It was totally a surprise, but my wife called it. It was amazing. I trust her nose from that point forward.
Sure. How has your tenant history been? Are you finding the right people? And has anybody left you with something, a little bit of a mess on the way out?
Not a little bit of a mess. Yeah. I guess everybody leaves with a little bit of a mess. We've had some just tremendous messes. Mm-hmm. So tenants are interesting. We try to be very real with people. Mm-hmm. We like to say that we operate our business. It's as much as our ministry as it is our business. Yep. So we try to be very loving, very caring to our tenants. I have probably had more than 100 opportunities to write an eviction notice, and I've written 2.
Nice.
We really work with tenants to try and, especially like through this whole COVID thing, and like, as long as you're communicating with us, we'll be your best friend. Yep. If you can give us the expectations, if you can give us the timelines, but if you're not communicating or you start communicating and then go dark, like those are the telltale signs. So we only had one person really take advantage of us through this COVID experience. And you couldn't evict tenants, and she knew it, and she took advantage of it. It was, ironically, it's the only tenant we've ever had that we didn't meet in person before we signed the lease. It was that same group of 3 houses where we were trying to flip the houses, and so we hired an assistant and had her go show the house, take the applications, meet the people, and she didn't. I don't know. My wife is pretty certain that she would have caught the vibe off this person. No way. But we didn't. And then, like Advocap paid for some of their move-in thing, and then another agency paid for the other half. And like, there were all these red lights going off in our brain, but we just still moved forward with her. And so, yeah, she took us for a little over $12,000 last year.
But yeah, like you said, it's unfortunately it's part of the business, and you kind of learn. Hopefully, you learn the lesson from that. And again, it wasn't really maybe even something that necessarily you had a part in, but it's your name's on the top of the company. So.
Yeah, and limited control over. I mean, there was no evicting, there was no I couldn't go in and throw them out. So it was just you kind of took it on the chops, and thank God it was only 1 property and not 6.
But for the most part, I think you're doing some pretty good screening on your tenants, and you're making sure kind of all the basics are there, and you've got a nice property to show in a lot of cases as well. I think for the people,
taking everything to flip level, and we focus on a little bit bigger. So 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom, my own, a couple 5-bedrooms, 1 6-bedroom. Bigger houses, taking them to flip level, we're kind of charging high end of the rent and market, and that eliminates a lot of the problem tenants right there.
Sure.
We still get questions every single day. Do you take Section 8? Yep, we absolutely will take Section 8. If our blanket income requirements for all of our properties is you have to make at least 2.5 times what rent is.
Okay.
So we do have a couple properties that are 100% Social Security. There's 5 people in the house, and they're all getting paid from that. And that feels really good because it kind of feels like I'm recycling my own taxes sort of thing. So Security's just paying that. But everybody else, I mean, most of our households have at least 2 incomes, and then typically some form of child support or Social Security or something after that. So really, we give people a lot of second chances. I mean, most tenants are in renting situation because of, let's face it, there's something in their past. Right. They've made some past mistakes, growing up, whatever those things are, and so we try to give people second chances and really trust but verify as best you can.
And when you've got vacancies now, you're going Facebook is kind of the main way that you guys are finding people?
Facebook just shut us down. I can't even believe this. So we put our for Wapaka, we put our post out there, and then we just put in a normal disclaimer. It's the whole normal thing. Newly remodeled, listed everything we're doing, and then at the bottom we put must have 2.5 times income to qualify, and then I think this is what got us. As I was feeling a little cheeky that morning or whatever, so I'm like, only responsible adults need apply. That's it. It was that little. Well, Facebook still has us shut down. Has our account shut down as we are potentially violating their whatever anti-discriminatory standards.
Sure.
So we take the exact same post, we pull it off of Katie's Facebook, we put it on my Facebook, except we take out that last line and it's fine.
Okay.
And so we actually did rent it through Facebook.
Good.
We do some stuff on Craigslist, but Facebook is where everybody's at.
Good. You mostly sign long-term leases then with people?
Yeah, so our program is we do a 12-month lease, and then it just rolls over month to month after that. So I think you asked before, is the intent to hold long-term? Absolutely. So like I mentioned briefly a little bit the investor program that we have. I haven't come up with a brilliant title or marketing campaign behind it. I call it the 10% forever investor plan, because it's like the most simple way to explain. Just explain what it is. Like, if you borrow us money to buy houses, we will pay you 10% forever on that money. Interest only, contract guaranteed.
Yep.
So a previous financial advisor that's regulated by the SEC and overseen by FINRA, I could never ever say contract guaranteed. Right. I could never ever quote a return. That. But now what we do is we bring investors to the table, and we use a $30,000 chunk of cash from our investor, which covers the down payment to purchase the house.
Sure.
And then covers the remodel costs typically on the programs that we buy. But then that 10% stays in our company as equity within the company. We have a couple different ways that we can structure it. Yep. And then we just pay you out of rent every single month. So our largest investor is getting just over $2,500 a month.
Sure.
And he'll get that forever. His principal is never going to erode.
Yep.
And even when he dies, he can pass it on as part of his trust or as part of his inheritance to whatever charitable organization he wants or whatever he's going to do. And our goal is to not pay him back. We want to keep that money as long as we can, so we can keep reusing it. And his goal is to supplement his income at retirement. Remember I told you that problem before? Every individual coming into retirement has to figure out, okay, do I either die before I spend all this money, or do I roll this money into a machine that keeps producing more money for me? So that's why we created this 10% forever investment program, because that's what we're really trying to do. We think wealth should be a team sport.
Sure.
We think becoming wealthy should be a group activity, and so we're very blessed to have such good investors that understand our mission and understand our heart and understand, and believe in our system.
Right. And it's a way for you to diversify some risk, and then you can continue to grow and
Absolutely. And it keeps my cash off the table. For me, like, once I got to the point where I realized I could make a lot of money with my money, I'm like, well, then I could make money with somebody else's money too, right? So, we still have, I have almost no money in the market. I've got a little bit in cryptocurrency. I've got a little bit in the market. Everything else is real estate.
Great.
Just because I'm kind of a control freak. I need to be able to control it, but that kind of limits how fast you can grow. And unless you find some really creative bank or something that'll loan you 80% loan to value on future repairs or something like that, which we do have some of those relationships kind of fleshed out. But it's more fun to do it as a team. And for me, I want to make an impact beyond just one deal. That's like flipping is great because you get a big chunk of cash. But really impacting giving a family a house to live in, giving an investor a place that they can safely park, some or all of their retirement funds, and then give them a vehicle so that they know that ongoing, they can worry about their golf handicap. They can worry, they don't have to worry about the market just.
They don't have to swing that hammer. They can, take a look at the projects. But for the most part, you've got the system down.
That's just it. Somebody can get into real estate, and we only take passive investors. Like if somebody wants to get into real estate and they're like, well, I'd love to go fix it. All right, dude, go buy your own house. We don't want that. We want somebody that just wants their check every month. And is confident that we're going to get it to them. So we're courting a couple investors right now, but we're definitely looking to grow our investor portfolio.
Great. So you're not doing like electrical or plumbing or some of that stuff, or do you have a contractor list that you work with then?
I do, yeah. So I can do light electrical. I'm actually really good at electrical now. It's taken me kind of a long time.
Couple shocks. But...
absolutely. Never with 220. But yeah, I've been hit by 110 a bunch of times. I've been hit. Well, the thing is, they say that when you reach the master level, it's because you screwed it up every way possible, sort of thing. So I'm by no means a master electrician. I hire master electricians. But if it's just replacing outlets or replacing fixtures, I'm very capable of doing all that kind of stuff. I used to do plumbing, and I just refuse. Anyway, to try to stop water from dripping is the most insane, mentally taxing game. I'm just like I want to hit it with a hammer, but that's not going to help it.
All right.
So we have a very deep sub list. Everybody from window cleaners, HVAC, plumbers, electricians. We do most of the any construction level stuff. So if we're tearing walls down, opening permits, that sort of thing, we're doing all that. We will bring in some painters. We actually try and roll as much money back into our tenants' pockets as we possibly can.
Oh, nice.
So I've had tenants dig ditches. I've had tenants paint. I've had tenants, carry rubble out, all kinds of stuff, demo houses even, just to try to cycle money back into our families so that, we know that they're doing good.
Sure. No, that's great. Do you have an ultimate exit strategy that you've built in?
I don't. I think what I finally come up with is a sound operational model, something that we can really kind of stick to. So in 2018, we bought 8 houses and sold 3. In 2019, we bought 8 houses and sold 2. And in 2020, I'd have to go back and look at the numbers, but I think what we're going to continue to do is we're probably going to continue to buy 5 or 6 or 7 every year. Yep. We'll probably flip 1 or 2, just because those hits of cash are really nice. But really, those hits of cash always get transferred back into cash flow. Yep. I mean, if I'm making capital gains, it's so that I can then go buy more cash flow. And I think long term, I don't see any reason to stop. Yep. Right now we've slowed way down right now, just in that we have accomplished all of those big goals that we set 15 years ago. And so when you accomplish all those big 15-year-old goals, these life goals, it's like you kind of start to relook at, you start to go back and challenge all your whys. Like, well, now why? Yep. What am I going to do? So yesterday I went and helped a guy. He's a friend through school. His and her parents are going through a transition with their healthcare, and they have a old bathroom, 1980s bathroom, and she is now to the point where she needs a handicap accessible bathroom. And so they have no idea where to start. They have no idea what to do. And so I'm like, look, I'll coach you through the whole process. Nice. I'm going to make you hire a plumber, and then I'll just come do everything else for free. Nice. And I don't really know these people. I know that they're Christians. I know that they love the Lord, and the Lord has really compelled my heart to go kind of help them. And what else should you do with freedom? Once you get to it, if it's not love your neighbor and help your neighbor as much as you've tried to help yourself. Sure. So that's kind of the next phase of my life, is try to figure out, like, okay, well, how can I adequately give back, and how can I kind of make an impact beyond myself? Sure. To try and make any of this have a lot of real good meaning behind it. Right. Just, Craig was here from the state of this state, and now he's gone.
Right. So other than the fact that we're in 2021 and it's hard to find good homes, I mean, you've got the foundation built, so your growth is, how do you stop from going too much in terms of the growth, or make sure you're enjoying the ride as well?
I have really enjoyed actually listening to your other podcasts. I have never, Logan Brankin, I was not aware of that too. Holy cow. Yeah. And Jason Lawn, I have followed that guy from afar for a long time. I don't ever want to be either one of those guys. I just don't. Jason's got this huge marketing machine. So he's got all these deals coming in the door, and Logan's got, it seems like his banking prowess and his ability to kind of analyze and put together deals is so far beyond mine. He's got 40 employees. I have 0 employees, and I want 0 employees. I don't want my phone to ever ring. And which seems silly, right? Because we're in business, but so. As far as moving forward, we find a lot of stuff off of referral now. We're out there enough that people know us, former houses that we flipped or realtors we worked with, those sorts of things. And then every investor makes their own deals. If you don't go hunt the deal out yourself, you can make some money doing wholesale deals or that sort of thing. But I'll never stop hunting.
No, that's great. What? How big was branding to your success in your companies and things like that?
Zero. Yeah, absolutely 0. If it wasn't if it wasn't for God and his hand guiding this whole thing, we found our investor that's been a really successful investor for us just through word of mouth. If you Google me right now, I'm everywhere. I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook. From the corporate sales side and all that, I've got so much stuff out there, but none of it's this life. It's all the corporate life before.
But you've got the website. You've got I've seen the YouTube with you fixing up a bathroom and a couple other projects.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah. So some of that is out there, but man, all that stuff now is 2, 3, 4 years old. That was 20 projects ago. That we were doing active marketing and whatever. So as far as building a brand and really supporting that brand, zero. And as far as just trusting in God and letting Him take us forward, 100%.
That's great.
And He's been faithful always.
Perfect. You talked about a couple of books. Is there anything else, that you recommend for ongoing education for people, or?
Yeah, well, I appreciate you giving me these questions ahead of time, so I have a chance to prepare this a little bit. Okay, so I've talked about the entire Rich Dad series. Everyone should buy that and read it. Just like, even if you're not interested in real estate, you should just buy it and read it, because everybody needs to have a financial education beyond what high school and college taught them.
100% agree.
So, Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, The Richest Man in Babylon. We talked about Think and Grow Rich. We haven't really talked about the RIAs yet. I definitely want to throw a shout out to Brett and Jackie Conkle and Dan Elhorn. So I've never really been part of Jason Lund's RIA. I've actually looked at it a little bit now, and it seems a lot cooler than what Jackie's was. Jackie's was really good for, I spent probably 5 or 6 years in that RIA, and I was the guy in the back of the room that never did a deal. I just listened to everybody. I was talking to people. I was networking, but I was in the corporate world. But through that RIA, Matt and Tina Palmer, Corey Raymond, Justin Willard and Jessica, Carl and Colleen Huth, we have seen so many people come through there that we cheer for, that they cheer for us, and we've kind of built this social circle now. The amount of value that you get out of those relationships can't be measured. Can't be measured, and the ongoing support where, Carl just stepped away from his job. He's been doing this for 5 or 6 years. He just stepped away. Dustin Rogatska, my cousin, who gave me Rich Dad Poor Dad, this is his last year, but he's just about to step away from his job. He's financially free already. He's still working the 9 to 5. So I would say get in the community, find people that are doing what you want to do, and then pick their brain. Most people that I know that have been blessed by real estate are insanely generous. They will, but don't just take, try to give something to them if you can as a newbie. Don't just take from them, but those are going to be, and then really anything that's on the internet. I think the thing that you've got to find about the internet is if they're flashing their Lamborghini or their Porsche or something like that, probably take their advice with a grain of salt. But there's there's so many videos on YouTube, and you can kind of learn some of the basics. But if you're a newbie and you think, I'm going to get into wholesaling and I'm going to make $20,000 on my first deal, and I'm going to just kill it, read some books. Don't do that. Don't try to do that.
That's great advice. We'll get into where people can find you, but any last kind of words of wisdom for people that are out there and either considering getting into real estate or trying to kind of get that last charge to kind of keep things going?
Yeah, no, so I guess we kind of talked about it already, but set goals. I think there's truly a universal power to the written and spoken word as far as setting an intention to the universe and letting the universe co-align all the pieces. Set goals. In real estate and really in investing in anything, you make your money when you buy. You have to buy it right. If you don't buy it right, there's not much you can do. And then I would say just always continue to pour into yourself. For us, so I had been a huge personal development guy, did all the Tony Robbins books and all those sorts of things. And the cool thing about Tony, or one of the cool things about Tony that I really took away is he said, once you set your goal, really the reward isn't the achievement of the goal. It's the person that you have to become to align to the goal. That's the victory. That's the reward. And it's so true. And the blessings that go along with that are so true.
No, that's great. Yeah. Well, again, we didn't get to, a ton of other things I want to fire at you, but this was a very impactful episode. So where can people find you if they wanted to, reach out?
So I'm all over the internet. If you just Google Craig Herrell, so it's craigherrell@gmail.com. You can look up Happy Home Contracting. I apologize for the quality.
It's got a website that doesn't accept people, but
but there is some starter information on there for newer investors that would like to learn more about the 10% Forever program. Otherwise, just give me a call, shoot me an email. I'm happy to converse with anybody, and hopefully we cross paths.
Yeah, perfect. Well, thanks again, and thanks everybody for watching.
God bless.